And now let me welcome on to the field of 68, none other than new Michigan head coach Dusty May. And Dusty, I got to ask you, you got to be honest with me here. Is part of the reason that you took the Michigan job because you knew that Jeff Goodman was much less likely to head to Michigan in the middle of the winter than Boca Raton? How much did that have an impact in your decision-making process?
That certainly played a factor. There was probably 3 or 4 things we were looking at, and how to avoid Goodman was definitely top 3.
Yeah, I just want to know, like, we set up this whole field of 68, I forget, tip-off, invitational, I forget what we called it, whatever it is. We set it up around you, and you leave after 1 year. So can we get Michigan in the new field of 68 invitational?
Well, I will say that the forecasting what happened, to avoid having to go to Charleston and Liberty was well played on my part, jokes aside. Those are 2 unbelievable mid-major jobs with, that are always going to be good. So, that's going to be a tough spot for the next staff. But, luckily we came away with a couple wins this year.
All right, Dusty, in all seriousness, you had your pick of jobs this offseason. What was it about Michigan that was that made it the place that you wanted to be?
I think part of it is just I live there. I live Ypsilanti, which is a neighboring town of Ann Arbor. I had such I guess, a high regard for this university and what it stood for, and the power of the Block M, the brand, and so it. With the AU, I was in an interview because I floored at that time and moved my family. And then I came down and I met the people, and I drove on campus and drove around Boca. And I just thought, wow, this fits me. I think we can attract some good players here and a quality staff. So I thought the same thing at Michigan. It usually comes down to, where do you feel like you can attract guys you really, really want to work with and serve? And also at a place, can you attract the right type of players for the way you want to coach and how much you enjoy going to work every day. So all those things played a part. So all that's wrapped up into the word I use too much. It's fit.
How crazy was it, Dusty, when you were going through all this? Season ended, even before the season ends now, it's hard as a coach because you've got people coming at your agent, people trying to contact you for the jobs that are open. A year ago, you went so deep that really there was nothing you could do, even if you wanted to go anywhere. How crazy was it, when getting down to the end of the season at FAU and when the season ends, to have to deal with, Ohio State, Vanderbilt, Michigan, all these schools, from a guy that, again, never would have expected this in a million years a few years ago. Let's be honest. Like, this wasn't something you necessarily saw coming as recently as a year and a half ago.
Well, last year was almost identical, just the level of jobs. It wasn't the same capacity, but it was the same calls, the same, I guess, feelers. And luckily we have representation that can, you speak well in advance of things that drive you and you're looking for. And so they handle all the small talk and conversation. The hardest part is when you get on your flight home, whenever you lose first round of the tournament in overtime, and you think you're at least going to be able to decompress with family, our parents are at games and friends and whatever. And they say your charter flight leaves in 3 hours to go back home. And so, I'm getting on the plane and I get a text that said, someone would like to come down and meet with you tomorrow. And I was like, man, we're not even going to get in till 1 or 2 in the morning. I'm exhausted. I felt like I hadn't slept in a couple of weeks just because we were at the end of the season. And so all of it happened so fast. And then you go meet with them and everything lines up, and then you're re-energized to start something new. And until then, I didn't realize maybe I'd gotten a little bit comfortable and stale. I don't want to say complacent, because I would never be complacent. But this I guess energized me like I hadn't had since the first year at FAU, and it just felt different. But also that was a good sign that I was energized to try to get this thing going.
Yeah, well, we can tell that you've been energized because you went out this weekend and added probably like half of your roster out of the portal. So now that you have this new team and these new faces, what is the key, the most important part of taking this roster and building it into a team that can win games?
Well, we went into it very intentional with trying to make sure that it fit the skill sets, the personalities, the aspirations. We made sure on paper and on film the guys made sense. And so now it's going to come down to, can we develop a team first mindset? Can we convince everyone in our locker room, staff included, myself included, that if we give, then at the end of the day, then you're going to receive back more than you ever imagined. So it's nothing that we haven't had to do every single year. I feel like our job as coaches, we're problem solvers, and sometimes we solve them better and more efficiently than others, but that's our job. So there will be things that come up, but just molding a team, really getting guys to care about each other and care about something bigger than themselves. And usually there's only a few of those. Mike Davis said it 2 years ago. He said there'll be about 5 teams at the end of the season that are true teams. And if you guys don't change, you could be one of those. And we kind of held on to that all year, 2 years ago, that if we can continue to be a real team, then we'll maximize our individual talents. And so we're looking for the same thing this year.
When Mike White, who obviously you work for, went from Louisiana Tech to Florida, he told me one of the hardest things for him was dealing with some of these highly touted kids that came in, right? The top 50, top 25 kids, and maybe some of the stuff that came along with them. This past year, you dealt with kids that, again, weren't highly recruited necessarily, but they had gotten a lot of hype over the last offseason. And again, that was a big part of what you had to manage this past year. What did you learn that you can kind of take forward now to maybe dealing with a higher level recruit and a big time, some of these big time transfers that come in from this past season?
I don't think it's anything that I learned per se. We all know it's difficult when you're dealing with extremely talented, motivated individuals, and there's one ball and 5 players on the court at a time. Now, would I have done several things differently? Absolutely. You try to anticipate what your biggest problems are going to be. You get out ahead of them. But absolutely, I learned that I would have attacked the off season a little bit differently with the messaging, the daily and weekly messages that we were putting out. I would have changed those a little bit and tailored them more towards the group. But once again, we brought back that team. Everyone on our roster worked like crazy to improve as individuals. And so naturally, when you get back to it, they want to show what they've worked on, what they've added. And with our group, there wasn't much room for addition. And then, we dealt with some injuries that people don't realize that made us unique. Giancarlo Rosado wasn't healthy off season. And when you go back and look at our Final Four run, he was as productive as anyone on our roster. He was out. Trey Carroll, who evolved into a really offensive force, he missed our last several games. Nick Boyd missed a lot of games early. So we never really settled into our roles. Guys were playing 30 minutes and then had to drop down to 20 to make room for other guys. So I learned a lot, but it wasn't as if these things weren't in the front of our mind. We just probably attacked some of the wrong areas, I would say.
When you are in the portal, when you are trying to, you're kind of, it's almost like speed dating with these recruitments, right? Like you had, instead of having the year or two when you're recruiting a freshman, it's like you get a week, basically. You get a couple of Zooms and maybe the kid's coming on a visit. What are you looking for? What are the identities of a transfer that you're trying to bring in to develop a culture at a new program?
There has to be a baseline of talent, obviously, and positional need at times. But we do look for positional versatility, guys that can slide up a spot or two, down a couple spots when needed. We definitely plug in a lot of numbers and look at efficiencies and shooting percentages. And then we go to the film, and then we really try to analyze, are these numbers factual, or are they situational? Did he shoot poorly because of this? And really try to dig into it and do a deep dive into it. After we feel like we have a good chance at them. So early on, you try to get involved. You look at the data, you go through Synergy and look at some clips and try to figure out, does he have the talent you need? And then once you get to second base, we really try to dive in and figure out, is this guy a fit for us? Can we help him? Or is this who he is and what he is? And then also, we all follow the game, and we're all, out in the summer talking about guys and watching.
Wait for you to unfreeze here.
We might have lost him for good.
We'll see. There he is.
Are you guys there?
Yeah, we got you back now. Yep, we got you back.
Okay. The viewers are very grateful that they you cut off on that tangent. No, but we look at how they fit into our style of play. We always recruit shooting, as Coach Beeline said. If they can't shoot, don't recruit. So if they don't have great numbers, then we try to figure out why. If they have good form and whatnot, if we can help them, and we even go back several years to look at how their most productive seasons or their least productive seasons. So we look at it from a lot of different views, but we rely on other people that we trust to tell us the characteristic traits and things like that. And also winning, obviously. If they come from winning programs, then they start ahead of some other guys.
I'm just imagining Goodman trying to figure out what effective field goal percentage is or offensive rating is while you're sitting here talking about the transfer you're getting, instead of just being like, he averaged 19 points a game. Look how good he was.
The eye test, baby. The eye test. All right. Speaking of which, the eye test told me that the Fab Five was pretty darn good back in the day. I didn't need any advanced metrics to tell me that Chris Webber and Jalen Rose and Juwan Howard and all those guys could play. Have you talked to any of them? Because I think that was one of the things that we all thought, like, okay, they supported Juwan Howard, obviously. They were at the game last year. Webber and Jalen Rose finally kissed and made up and all that. Have you tried to bring those guys in yet, or have you been too busy in the portal, and that'll be a task down the road to kind of get those former guys in the program, to keep them in the program?
A day, and sometimes it might just be 3 guys off the same team. Sometimes it might just be 4 or 5 guys from the 70s. And so I haven't connected with those guys, but I've connected with a lot of great former Michigan players, and it's incredible how much they love this program. There's been some coaching transition. It's not as if there's been one coach here 30 years. They've had several coaches, several different eras, but they've all been successful. And every player that I've spoken with really, really cares about the Block M, and they have a lot of pride having played at Michigan.
Whether you are a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. After a 6-month season loaded with cross-country travel, I can promise you that proper recovery is a priority for me these days. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this episode of The Field of 68. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or the EE system. If you haven't heard of the EE system yet, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in New Jersey or at one of the hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. If you're interested in experiencing the EE system technology for yourself, go to unifiedhealing.com/unified68 to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/UNIFYD, the number 6, the number 8. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including the EE system. All right, Dusty, you have Big Ten roots. Been a while since you've been back in the Big Ten. How steep is the learning curve going to be for you trying to figure out this league, these teams, some of the new additions to the league like UCLA and USC? Are you sitting here watching games from last season? How do you get yourself acclimated to a new conference?
Right now, typically in a normal year, every job I took as an assistant or head coach, you were watching a game a day. You're watching one from the last season. You're watching league opponents. Now, as frequently these coaches change jobs, and so no, I haven't had an opportunity. It's been recruit film and a little bit of Michigan basketball last year to watch the returners to evaluate them in practice and in games and things like that. But I had a chance with 18 teams. I'm not sure anyone's had enough time to study the league that they're in.
So do you think you're going to get cheered or booed when you go back to Bloomington, Indiana?
I have no idea. I would say if we win, I'll be booed. If they win, I'll be cheered.
Yeah, I'll tell my daughter will cheer for you. I promise. I promise. She won't boo you. She won't boo you.
For those 2 hours, I'm the enemy, though. I get it.
So you've got how many players on your roster? I got down here 5 transfers, 2 incoming freshmen. I don't know if you can talk about all these guys if they've signed yet. I think they have. Is that right? You got 7 guys right now, like officially on your roster? Does that sound right?
I'd be lying if I said exactly. We have some moving parts where 1 or 2 have signed or have not signed. We have 1 that's signed that hasn't released. Like there's some moving parts. So I can't answer that right now.
No,
sooner than later, we'll have an announcement and a press conference so we can announce the entire group as a whole.
Yeah, I like what you've done so far, kind of like you said, putting together the parts that fit together. It's the beautiful thing about nowadays taking over a new job is that you can flip this thing quickly because of the portal. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it was a rebuilding job where what would we say always? Year 3 and 4, right? That's what everybody would say. You have like year 3 and 4, and that's how I'm going to judge you. Now I'm judging you on year 1. Whether it's right or wrong, there's not a lot of time anymore. The expectations are there right away. And honestly, they're kind of fair because if you've got NIL and you have a new job, there's no reason you can't flip something fairly quick, right?
100%. There's an opportunity for all of us to put a quality product on the court. Obviously, you wish you had a culture established and a way of doing things on a daily basis. But yeah, there's no excuses. Now, keep in mind, we all have NIL, but some have the Kansas City Royals NIL and some have the Yankees NIL. And so it's different for everyone. But yeah, we're all looking for the same thing. Really good players that we can get at a value and guys that can outperform their NIL capabilities.
What baseball team would you compare your NIL to, Dusty? If you had to compare it to one baseball franchise, who would you compare it to?
Jeff, it's amazing. You hear this team has an ungodly amount of NIL, and then you talk to someone else and they say they don't know they have the lowest. So I don't know. It's one of those things. I think NIL too is fluid, where there's possibilities of this team having this. So I would say probably we're in the middle. We're in somewhere. We're definitely not the top, and we're definitely not the bottom. But we are working every single day to try to get it up and sustainable. To be honest, something where we year in year out have a group that is really, I guess a part of our success.
Hey, give me the biggest number. The biggest. I'm asking for who threw it out. Give me the biggest NIL number that has been thrown your way so far this offseason since you took the job.
Over $1 million for certain guys, and that's not an isolated event. It's been several conversations where they say this, but also, you pick up the phone and you say, what's he looking for? Well, he wants minutes and he wants this, and then it always comes around NIL, and the number might be cut in half and within 30 seconds, and so you don't really get mad at people for throwing out numbers. But there was one example where there was an astronomical number for a player, and let's just call him a Doster. And so we started joking that became a metric where one of the player, an NIL agent reached out and said, "Hey, would you be interested in this player?" And I said, "Of course." And he said, "Well, we figure he could he's at least 50% of a Doster." And I said, "So that's a new metric. So we're going a half a Doster, a quarter a Doster."
So basically what you're telling me, Dusty, is now we're deeming Doster as a completely overrated, insane person who thinks their value is way higher, like double, triple what it really is. That's him in the field of 68, Dusty. That is
it's an actual currency. Doster is a new currency where they get a half a Doster. We'll just call it $1 million. Doster's worth $1 million. And so a half a Doster is 500,000.
Look, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm taking that. I'm sending it to my agent right now. Doster's worth $1 million from Dusty May. There you go. We'll clip it up. We don't need any of the rest of that. We'll clip that part out right there and send it to everyone. I got one more question for you, Dusty. And
Let's
I'm putting you on the spot. You got to do this, right? You're now the Michigan head coach. Can you sing the victors? Do you know the words? Can you sing the song?
I do not know all of the words yet. I'm getting closer. I think it has to be the top fight song in the country. Shout out Dane Fife. When we worked together in Indiana, he came in almost every single morning to the Dupe room humming "Hell to the Victors." So I was a closet Michigan football fan throughout my years, and now I can finally come out and root for the maize and blue. But no, I've got to pick it up. But once again, recruiting and staffing has been the two priorities.
So Dane Fife, an Indiana basketball legend and a guy that was an assistant coach at Michigan State for like a decade and a half, sings the victors nonstop. Good to know. That's some baggage that we got on him now. We got some dirt on him.
After the first line, it became humming, and we were all grateful for that.
All right. Well, listen, we appreciate you coming on. Like I said, if we want to put together another Field of 68 Invitational, we're in. So Michigan, we got to find 2 other teams, do a pod like we did with FAU, Charleston, and Liberty, and get this thing going at the highest level. But we appreciate the time. We appreciate you driving safe. Just so you know, I got a speeding ticket about a month ago for going 92 and a 65. So don't speed. Whatever you do, don't.
Hey,
speed.
I'm in the flow of traffic, but if the Field of 68 can come up with a Doster, we're in.
Done.
Later, guys.
See you,
Thanks,
man.
Dusty.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching the Field of 68. If you've enjoyed what you've seen here, hit that like button, share this link with your friends, or check out the description for some other places that you can consume Field of 68.